As I've been announcing these last weeks, there is something called Tadatmya, Devotional Alliance. And today we want to officially present this project to all of you. And as most of you know, since a few interesting and unexpected circumstances happened a year or so ago in my life, Krishna showed his mercy to me and his shelter and inspiration in so many ways. And one of them, in the form of the inspiration that he provided at that time, in so many ways, and one of those taking the shape of a series of lectures on radical personalism, and eventually a whole book about the concept of radical personalism, and eventually a whole podcast, the Free Radical podcast, revolving around the notion, the presentation of radical personalism, and so on and so forth. Very interesting ripple effect with newer and newer currents of insight and inspiration. And again, by Krishna's grace, many devotees, many friends around the world, from many Vaishnav designations, and even from other religions as well, felt called by the notion of radical personalism, felt deeply aligned, identified with this presentation, expressing how this particular way of approaching our tradition and spirituality in general, not only limited to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but how this particular approach provided them with lots of relief and great hope. Probably those were two of the main words I heard, making them feel that, okay, I can actually be a practitioner, I can actually be part, I can actually belong to this tradition. And in that connection, they felt that the main principles of radical personalism, the overall mood of the presentation, made them, again, that Krishna consciousness, Krishna bhakti is relevant, can still be relevant to me, can be relatable to me. And again, I can belong to Krishna consciousness and not merely try to fit in one way or another. So as a result of all that, and many of you may already be part of that, as a result of that, how to say, I suddenly had a very beautiful family of radical personalists, deeply aligned, deeply identified with this notion of radical personalism. So a very natural necessity came in an organic way as a very, how to say, unavoidable unfolding, as a following step to take in this organic yet unplanned project, so to say. But the plan was in someone else's mind above, inside our hearts, Sri Hari. So the necessity that naturally unfolded and came very organically was to create a group identity. For those who are already tuned in with radical personalism and this particular approach to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, that again we call it radical personalism. So this natural necessity came like a very obvious organic blossoming, so to say, of the bud of my presentation of radical personalism. And interestingly, despite in my personal case having been part of two main devotional communities in the past 25 years in different sections of my life, and for different reasons having been disconnected from them, as you know, despite losing, so to say, those communities or families, Krishna has beautifully reciprocated with a whole new family. Of course, plus, of course, many old friends, brothers and sisters who continue to be there in my life. So the idea of the group identity is connected to this, basically, to how to give shape, how to honor the gift that Krishna has given me, and not only me, of course, in the form of wonderful uh, birds of the same feather, so to say, who are willing to flock together. So what we are announcing today is basically that is a further framing and shaping of something that has already been going on for quite a good time, who has already been fermenting, if you will, for more than a year and probably beyond that. And this natural urge also has the intention of deepening the commitment of those who are already there, who are already committed and participated and aligned with these principles, with these ideals. As it usually happens when you have any sincere, how to say, amount of hearts as part of the equation. Naturally, the need. mm, they naturally will want to increase the quality of their belonging. Well, we already belong, we are already part of this beautiful tribe. How we can further belong, how we can go deeper in our belonging, in the exchange, in the interaction of our hearts. And naturally, that organic need to go deeper, to give further shape to our belonging, that invokes in itself a new shape, whatever of whatever was already existing before. So it's what we are sharing today is just a natural extension of something already existing, already taking shape. Mm. And as the decision to give this further shape came again as a very organic, natural, obvious necessity for many, I also will like to remain open, and not only me, to let this project develop in the exact same way as it was unexpectedly created, so to say. No, as I mentioned in my book, Radical Personalism, this new project, the project of the book. When I wrote the book, I mentioned this project of radical personalism is the development of a conversation. It's an ongoing dialogue, an ongoing conversation. So since this group identity we are presenting officially today is somehow an extension, overflow of the radical personalism book and presentation, it inherits the same blueprint or DNA, that of an ongoing conversation. And we are opening to allow the conversation to flow to the places that it needs to go. So, in that sense, we don't have any specific master plan for the future, so to say, where every single stage is already designed and thought about how everything should ideally unfold for the next 5 decades. Actually, we don't have that, and we don't want to have that, but we want to remain open to listen to what the sweet absolute wants to make of all this, basically. Trusting that the project will take its own shape as the need arises, and it's happening in this precise moment. So that's it. Again, we are inaugurating the whole thing today, in one sense, by giving it a name. Again, before this day, before this giving a name, many other things have happened as a building up momentum for today. And after today, of course, many other things will surely happen to different newer stages of further shape to this particular way of belonging deeply to our ideals. But today is a, if you will, namkarana, samskar, is the name giving ceremony. And while it may sound silly to some that the whole event is made for merely giving a name to something, if you think it deeply, it's not. It's a very important step. Naming something allows us to further understand what's that something, to further define, to further um, deepen our sense of identity of that something we are naming. Like if you give a name to your child, it adds to his identity. A person without a name, we will feel there's something lacking. Generally, that's one of the main things we ask someone when we meet them first time. What's your name? Now, in the Bible, this is in the Genesis story. There's a famous story of Adam and Eve when God is creating all these different things, but they do not have a name, and they are invited to name the different things. So after Adam and Eve are naming the things, tiger, tree, apple, whatever, after naming something, then that those things become what they are, so to say. It's a form of co-creation. And of course, in our tradition, as well as in many others, we have these name giving ceremonies. Our name, again, is deeply tied to our identity, to our sense of who we are. Try to think about your own name, whether secular or spiritual. Uh, and of course, someone may say, well, but those name giving ceremonies are names given to people, to living beings, to humans, or whatever, or to pets in some cases, or whatever, to trees, to cars in some cases, to vehicles. But I will say that giving name to a group, I mean, we are not one person, we are a group of people. So to naming a group of people is not that much different than to giving a name to one individual being. Probably even more important, since it's a group of many individual beings coming together under one banner, so to say. It's a collective identity. And it's not an identity imposed onto anyone. It's a collective identity that we are trying to give shape today further for those who would like to say yes. I belong to that. I'm Tadatmya with that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So it's basically to give reference to people to their own identity, to help others to figure out their own identity by giving shape to a group identity in which we are trying that people can belong and can figure out them therefore their own identity. And again, particularly in our tradition, in our Gaudiya tradition, it all begins with the name, Nam. First Nam, as our tradition teaches, then you can have Rupa, Guna, and Lila. But it all begins with Nam. First the name, then Rupa, form, then Guna, qualities, then Lila, movements. So in the same way, to create some form of parallel, we're here beginning today with the name of this new project. And we trust that by the grace of the name, everything else will come. From Nam will come Rupa. So from the name will come a particular further shape to the project. And from that Rupa, specific guna will come, specific attributes, defining qualities of the group, which are already there, but again, in time, all this needs to continue being churned. And from Nam Rupa Guna, hopefully Lila will come. Lila means loving interaction, very dynamic loving interaction. So we expect that that's what we are facilitating with the inauguration of this particular group identity. But again, in order for all this to happen, Rupa, Guna, Lila, first we have to name what we will then like to frame. When we say naming and framing, it begins with naming. So what's the name we are introducing today? Me and others kindred spirits have decided that an ideal name for our group identity will be Tadatmya, Devotional Alliance.